Good morning and good afternoon and good evening. Welcome at this webinar. My name is Alain Mulder and I'm the Senior Director Europe Operations at IMA, the Institute of Management Accountants, based here in Amsterdam. Just a brief introduction of IMA before we go to the webinar itself. As IMA, we are one of the largest and most respected associations focused exclusively on advancing the management accounting profession. And we are proud to support our members and the profession through the research, the CMA, Certified Management Accountant Program, continuing education, networking, and advocacy of the highest ethical business practice. Our members are truly located all over the world and are supported regionally out of the offices that you see on this map. But let's now go to the agenda of this event. Before I go through the agenda, first I would like to say thank you to our partner Workiva, because we are organizing this event together with Workiva, and I truly want to thank them, not only for the knowledge, but really being a truthful, very powerful partner for this webinar. So thank you once again. The first part we already covered. It was opening this great webinar. And then after that, we go to the second part, accelerating digitization, new roadmap for 2021, which is the panel with actually very great and knowledgeable panelists. First one is Christian Kuzik, he's Vice President Finance at Johnson & Johnson. And with Joël Carrère, Head Performance Reporting Business Insight at AkzoNobel. But before we go to the panel, I will first introduce you to all the panelists, but also the moderator of the panel itself. So I have the pleasure of introducing you to Christian Kuzik, CMA. He is Chair Emeritus of IMA's Global Board of Directors for the 2020-2021 fiscal year. And he's also a member of IMA's Governance and Nominating Standing Board Committee. Christian is the Vice President of Finance at Johnson & Johnson Vision in Santa Ana, California. And he has been with Johnson & Johnson, or J&J, for more than 13 years now, holding positions of increasing responsibility both internationally and in the US. And our second panelist is Joël Carrère, and she has a strong track record in delivering on transformation programs. She gained experiences in building new organizations, re-engineering processes to optimize organizational efficiency and quality to meet customer experience. In the near future, Joël will be the lead transformation programs in the area of finance operations, process improvements, or ERP implementation, from the strategy to delivery, bringing together people, processes, and systems. And the moderation will happen by Connor, and I have the pleasure of introducing Connor Keller. And he has over 20 years of experience as a senior finance operations controller for multinational corporations, including Workiva, Hewlett-Packard, and Ericsson, as well as international financial standard setters. He holds a Master of Science in Technology Management and has served as Vice Chair of the Board of Directors of XBRL International Inc. And he is a fellow of the Chartered Accountants Ireland and a past member of council at Chartered Accountants in Ireland. And he is a member of the Institute of Management Accountants. So now I have the honor to give the floor to the panelists. Great introductions, very knowledgeable. So I'm really looking forward to hear all the insights. Connor, the floor is all yours.
Very much. Thank you very much, Alain. I'm absolutely delighted to be joining you today, and good afternoon from Dublin, Ireland. By way of introducing the topic, Alain, we've been having conversations with the IMA and the IMA members now over the last couple of months, I guess, around a discernible increase in digitization and an acceleration of the adoption of digitization that we've seen over the last 12 months. And our dialogue has taken the form of webinars and a whole series of kind of structured dialogues with the IMA members in the form of surveys, in the form of white papers, and in the form of webinars. And so we thought we'd follow up today with an executive roundtable. Absolutely delighted to be joined by Joël and Christian here, my panelists. really to pick up on some of those themes, Alan, and some of the questions that were put to us during the webinars that we didn't quite get to. So very, very pleased indeed to be having this dialogue with the IMA members. And I guess, first of all, the question that we get is, hey, you know, is there a pattern to the responses that we've seen in organizations, and how IMA member organizations have responded over the last 6 months? And secondly, is this accelerated move to digitization linked to COVID and audit, etc. So the first question I get is, look, what's been happening over the last couple of months? And I break it down into kind of 5 distinct phases, Alan. I think if I go back to last March in particular, about this time 12 months ago, I think the response we saw right across the industry and right across the IMA members, you know, regardless of geography or role, was, you know, a kind of a concentration on operational basics, process enablements, you know, operational resilience and internal controls. Again, if we look back kind of last March, April or so, clearly the focus at that stage was on gaining end-to-end visibility of the business and standardization and centralization of the processes as were at that time. There was a second, to my mind, very discernible move some weeks after that, and I'm thinking about maybe March through to June, which was the emergence of the remote digital workplace, where the focus there was very clearly on working from home, staff engagement, you know, transitioning that support model from the office into the home environment, you know, with minimal onboarding, with a user-friendly type of adoption, very much focused on staff engagement, but a very discernible move to, you know, a digital workplace. As it became apparent then that processes were going to be disrupted over the medium term, I think this is one of the most important shifts we've seen, Alan, and that's the shift of corporate governance into the cloud, enabled by some of these collaborative technologies. And I think what organizations were trying to achieve here is greater governance, increased scalability, you know, reduced redundancy, greater connected finance operations and people, but within a corporate governance framework. And so we saw the adoption of things like oversight and control, things like, you know, questions around kind of management estimates and judgments. How do we track them in the cloud, given that our people are now kind of dispersed? We certainly saw over here in the United Kingdom ongoing conversations, Alan, over the last, you know, medium term over corporate governance. They manifest themselves in the section 172 of the Companies Act conversations, which are still going on. We had conversations as well with the IMA members, Alan, around how they performed some of their SOX 404 controls and their section 304 controls. The feedback we got there, ironically, was we've done it, you know, with technology that we had available to us. However, you know, time management and bandwidth and concentration and work-life balance all became, you know, not quite problematic, but much more prevalent in the conversation. So I think we've seen a fundamental shift of corporate governance to the cloud over the last, you know, certainly 12 months. I think, and I'd be interested to hear our panelists' view on this. I think the other very fundamental shift that we saw was the shift of process and controls agility, again, using technology and a fundamental reassessment of that, right? An ability to respond to market uncertainty with pace and agility in financial processes, while still maintaining the highest levels of control and trust, right? And that's quite a balancing act, right? And so, you know, we saw the centralization of controls, the assessment and deployment of new controls, were we right to rely on the controls, historic controls, or did new models emerge? Remote staff engagement, remote staff assignment, centralized tracking and completion, and enhanced compliance. And that, of course, was always set against the context of business resilience enablement. Our stakeholders and our businesses, rightly so, increased the demand to support business enablement, liquidity management, payroll changes, government assistance, flexible remote working, supporting the staff, reopening the business, all with kind of increased velocity and kind of volume and variety of data, and a changing governance and control environment. So I think that's what we've seen over the last 12 months, and the conversations we've had with IMA and the membership, I think, all bear that out. So again, I'm very pleased to be joined by Christian and Joelle, who can maybe give us their first-hand experience of that. And so I'm going to welcome them to our panel now. Welcome, Joelle and Christian.
Thank you. Maybe I can start just to give you some perspective. So I'm Joël Carrère, living in the Netherlands and working for AkzoNobel. This is a coating company of 8 billion turnover. We are globally present in the world. The thing is that what I see on the screen here seems to me a long transformation journey. And if I look at our company in AkzoNobel, this is something we have started long before COVID, because the last 3 years we have entered in a huge transformation program where all the elements you have mentioned, Connor, were present. And this transformation program was focused on finance, so to reduce our cost from the finance operation, but also reduce the complexity of our IT landscape, so reducing all the system we are using. And by having started this journey long before COVID, these are helped us to be to get some strength during the COVID period. Also, as a big, we are quite a multinational, so we were already used to remote working. It was quite frequent that colleagues were working from home. We are also a global team. For me, I manage a daily team which are in India and in China. So for us, this is a part of our daily business model. So we were, the COVID per se didn't endanger our processes, but it just comforted us, our leadership team, that 5 years ago, when they had to make the decision to transform our operating model, that they made the good choice, because this has enabled us to operate during this COVID period.
Excellent. And the
maybe Christian.
Yeah, the response seems to be kind of polarized, Joelle, when we spoke to some of the IMA members. I'd be interested, Christian, what are your experiences, over the around kind of the drivers over the last, 6-9 months? Does this ring true? Does this resonate?
Yeah, and so thank you for having me, and absolutely privileged to be here with Joelle. And I'll just build off of what Joelle said. And Johnson & Johnson is no different in the sense that we too have been embarking on sort of a transformation journey within finance, moving, as many large companies have been doing over the course of the last 10 years, to sort of this service delivery model where you put different jobs that get done in finance in different areas of the world. It's certainly made us more global. It's certainly, put, I would say, transactional work in service centers, and then enabled that through software and technology to make that work. As you were talking and as you were covering the slide, you know, I was reflecting on this past year. It's been, you know, exactly a year to the day that we all basically here, at least in the US, went home and thought we would probably be back sooner than later, and that hasn't happened. And I can't imagine having done that 5 years ago when we didn't have all these, you know, the software and technology enablers. It really did, you know, allow us in the first couple of months of closing the books over the quarter to be able to do so with both the confidence that we had in our ability to rely on access to data, particularly with software that allows for workflow pass-offs between service organizations and those that are responsible for covering off on the controls and signing off on the results. And I think that's key. So yes, you know, it's the COVID pandemic has accelerated our both dependency and you know, call it engagement of the software and technology as a way of how we work. I do think that, you know, once we do evolve and come out of COVID and we're in a somewhat steady state and normal place, we're going to be better equipped. We will have proven that we can, you know, close the books, report on results in a compliant manner that we all feel good about, knowing that we all did it from a work from home environment. So it's we've benefited from that. So it's, you know, 6 months has probably felt like 6 years, Connor, or even longer. I got to be honest with you. Last year's felt extremely long.
Yeah, interestingly, I spoke to some of the leadership in the Irish Institute of Chartered Accountants, and they made the point that we have made more as a profession. You know, we've made more investment in IT enablement in the last 6 months than in the last 10 years. Joelle, I heard, you know, confidence. I heard, you know, our ability to have confidence in what we're signing off through access to data, you know, workflow, you know, I heard, you know, kind of peace of mind, if nothing else, from Christian. How do you guys look at the role the technology plays in enhancing financial controls and management oversight in corporate reporting?
Well, on the data side, so well, on the technology, so as in our journey, we also so the data was also a very important component. I think like all the companies, and then we by having technology, we could well, I mean, first access our data, and after make to get visualization and reporting out of this data and make it relevant for our leadership team. Having said that, also this journey we started it before COVID. So with COVID, we have taken benefit of the fact that we could have access to our data, we could understand our data, and certainly in the area of order to cash, you know, when in March we started seeing customers which were paying less in time, and so having access to all this data, particularly in this area, this could have helped us prevent losing money and losing on working capital. And also this has also enabled us to see during this journey how not so good our data was, and then to implement and make improvement, well, some quality improvement process in place. So yeah, so accessing the data, so the technology has helped us to access the data, to make you know, a story out of it, and to also make plans and implement these plans to have to higher the level of integrity and accuracy of our data. Because at the end of the day, I mean on the financial process, it is quite a secure process, and we have you know, regular assessment, and this is well under control. But beside this financial process, we found out that having, you know, making use of our data and possible to build a story out of this data to support our business and our transformation model was also helping us a lot.
Excellent, and this is really interesting, Joelle. So I know Christian is a big advocate of using technology for data gathering and to make that more efficient and streamlined. I think, Christian, one of the challenges that organizations have had over the last period of time is that the nature of the data required to go and make some of these judgments and management estimates have shifted quite considerably. One, due to the nature of COVID, and I guess secondly through to the nature of people working from home, kind of supply chain adjustments, fulfillment models that have been shifting and moving around. I guess the ability to execute and support supply chains end to end. As we've gone through this cycle, has the nature of the data required changed in your mind, and how have your teams solved that, if that's the case?
Yeah, I would say there's a little bit of oh, sorry, Joelle, were you gonna?
Oh no, go on, Christian. It's good.
I think we still are working to address some of the age-old problems that we have, which are around master data. And listen, master data is always sort of what I would say is the Achilles heel of finance and how we operate as a business. But we are using technology in a way, where you've got multiple ERP systems, particularly when you acquire new businesses. They tend to come with their own ERP, and you have to operate for some time in those environments. And I think getting that right with technology is super important. Being able to understand where the master data may be incorrect, rather than finding that out later on down the line, super important. Getting to that, what I would say is one version of the truth, right? As finance professionals, we value our work in the sense that we always want to stand behind what it says, right? And that's super important that the base data be correct. I'll also say that technology's helped. You say when that the data has changed. I don't know if the data has changed, but our ability to use technology to show data in different views has changed. So I'll give you a good example. Quite oftenly, we provide for the business reporting is a collection of sales in different currencies, and everybody knows that depending on what currency exchange rate you use, you can show different results. And so we're always looking to make sure that we minimize any changes in currency so that we can show the operational results at one currency exchange rate that makes the business reporting much easier to understand and less of an ability to have to explain currency fluctuations. And to have business partners that sometimes don't quite understand the currency in the reporting. And so it's a lot easier when you can take one variable out of the reporting and bring it down to one base of just operational. So I think having that agility, having that flexibility in your software and in your technology to lock down certain things, master data, to lock down on one FX rate that allows you to report out on an operational basis has certainly helped tremendously to streamline and make more efficient some of the data that we use for decision making.
Yeah, excellent. Joelle, you got some perspective on that?
Yeah, well, for us, it's a bit the same as what Christian was saying, and particularly, so this is in the area where I am familiar to, because this is what we have started 3 years ago with Saxo and the team I'm leading. So in the team where I'm leading, so it's in what we are doing is that we are making out of the data, providing business insight. So indeed, so it means that we have built a platform where you have the one source of the truth, and then we have also several ERP systems, and we have connected all this ERP to business warehouse platform, and then by using technology, then we can pick and choose from this business warehouse system. I won't go into the details. And to make visualization reporting available to our stakeholders, and our stakeholders can be finance, they can also be global process owner, people working in the global business service. So it is a lot of people in the organization have access to this platform, where anytime you want to have some metrics, it can be on order to cash, purchase to pay, record to report, in master data itself or IT, you would go to this platform and then pick and choose the information you need. First, what we had to do is to understand the data and so improve it. And now what we are working on now is, because we have very good understanding of the data, we can support our business partner to understand, okay, what area do they need to influence to continue improve their process, improve their results. We are at the stage now that we can also do a prediction. So with our data, I have in my team some data analysts who can work on prediction, and we are also using some technology around process mining and data mining. We have all these tools. We have invested a lot of money to buy this tool, and that's what we are becoming better and better with the use of data, and also making stories for our users. And so really you need to take to onboard also your organization with the journey with the data, because before we had the view and the visibility on the on all the data we have, people were managing the business by feeling. And now you can show them based on data, facts, and this is much easier to, first the discussion is going faster, and then you can show, and you can also decide on, make some decision, and very fast after measure if your decision got the results we plan to have.
Let me pick you up on one of those points around cost and cost management, Joelle. So one of the outputs that came back from our dialogue with the IMA members is that our survey indicated that a large cohort indicated that members were happy with the status quo, and they had gotten through the extra workload of COVID over the last couple of months with the status quo, with what they had. However, they did respond that over 60% of them felt that time management had become significantly more challenging. It spurred the question, I guess, which I'd be interested to hear your perspective on, as to what do you think is hindering adoption of new technologies in corporate reporting? What's kind of holding it back, do you think? What are the barriers that finance teams need to get through,
Yeah, my opinion is that it is the fear for change, and this is for all the change you can think of. And people, they feel comfortable. Well, we all feel comfortable when we are in a sort of a routine process and routine situation. And then anytime you need to embrace new processes or new way of working, the first reaction is people are afraid about this change because they think it's too complex. Yeah, it will take time for them to understand this change. So for me, I think this is first that, and also after the second element is maybe it is the finance, because it's capital intensive when you want to implement technology, and it's also time consuming. You need to have the ability, to be able to allocate this project type of work within your organization as well. And I wonder, I'm always puzzled, and I wonder how organizations who didn't engage in this change before COVID, how they could possibly start this type of transformation during COVID.
Exactly.
Maybe Christian, no. Maybe Christian, you can.
Yeah, I would say the only build I would put on that, and I think you're spot on, is it seems like the landscape of finance technology changes so often. Even over the course of the last, I would say 5 years, the number of tools, and don't get me wrong, I love the innovation in this space, but it does put a lot of pressure on us as leaders of finance organizations to focus some of the time and effort on training and technology. I mean, Tableau has now become almost synonymous with part of a development plan and a training plan because of the proliferation of reporting that we're using with Tableau. But you look at all the other technology software packages, whether it's ClickView, whether it's a planning, Hyperion planning, and even before that, other versions of softwares, and they all require a significant amount of time investment to understand how they work. How do you build reports? How do you link data? How do you ensure that the data that you're linking is telling, is first the right data, and then when it's put into a report, it actually is accurate and correct. You don't get doubling of figures and things like that. So it's a lot of time and effort that has to go into learning a new software. And Joel, I think you're spot on. Leaving the world of Excel, where we're comfortable and we've built all our reports, and you have a nice file folder of what you did last year, and then you just copy paste, and now you got this year. You have to change your work style, and you have to change, and it's disruptive to what you did, and building in the time for that sometimes a challenge.
You've walked right into my next question, Christian. Incidentally, our participants and our audience, you can ask our panelists questions on the very bottom of your toolbar there. You should see Q&A. So I see one in there at the moment, which I'll come to in a second. But do feel free to put your questions in there. So, Christian, if I could maybe stay on that topic, having introduced the problem statement, this kind of balance, I guess, and we see it from regulators on both sides of the Atlantic, the US SEC, we see it here with the Financial Reporting Council in the United Kingdom, and ESMA, in Europe here, and some of the local regulators here, all of whom have called out, even pre-COVID, the requirement to make sure that finance tells a cohesive story from the internal management accounting through to the strategic report, through to the Ks and the Qs, through to the accounting disclosure notes, down to even an entity specific level. And so this seems to be a challenge that certainly the regulators on both sides of the Atlantic have picked up on, certainly maybe for the second or third year in a row now, and is driving some of the audit and kind of oversight questions. How do you kind of balance all of that, and how do you well, first of all, I guess, what role does technology play, in making sure that corporate reporting tells a cohesive story between business units and kind of statutory, etc., and how do you balance all of that then?
Yeah, at each probably each corporation has their own technology and tools to consolidate business unit results in a, call it, in a form or a fashion that helps them ensure quality of the data. We at J&J have the same thing. We have a single system that we use to consolidate and report internal data for street reporting. I don't work in our corporate controllers group, so I can't comment on specifically for SEC reporting. But what I can say is that as it relates to my finance group, and what we do is, obviously technology has enabled us to have a good, robust, what I would call BVA review. That is the result of at the end of a quarter end close, and we do that globally. So we will close the books, we will meet as a team, and we do that now over Zoom, as probably everybody else is doing, and we utilize the technology and the views coming out of our general ledger and our SAP system, which then are consolidated and presented in a format that allows us to kind of see where there are year-over-year fluxes and variances then budget versus actual, that allows us to kind of think through and interpret the results. And then a lot of that is then in turn, through our reporting, then put in as commentary to help guide the overall thinking for the corporation. Now, clearly, this is always an area where insights into the business and getting those to the right people at the right time is always a challenge. But I do feel like, kind of coming back and where technology plays a role, you know, your review of the results is only as good of as your analysis on the data. So sometimes, you know, looking at one country's results, particularly in a COVID environment where things just went upside down, I mean, literally over a course of a couple of quarters, you know, we started to bring in our data analysis group, so a team that sits outside of finance to sit with us after close to help us better understand and make sure that we've gotten it right. You know, looking at incidents of COVID that was being reported out of the different countries. I mean, we even, before we got on this call, we were talking together about, you know, what we're seeing in Europe happen again. And, you know, that starts to then fall into your thinking as you're starting to think about both reporting on the quarter or thinking about the quarter, what is happening in the external environment. You can't ignore what's going on outside the four walls of your company. It clearly has an impact on your results. And so finance, you know, I think this is technology was certainly helped us, but I think it's technology and reaching out outside the walls of the finance group to pull in the people that can help you interpret the data. And it's different data, right? So we were looking at pandemic infection rates. We were looking at government restrictions. We're looking at how now we're looking at the rate of vaccines, right? And vaccine deployments, numbers getting vaccinated as a way to help understand and interpret results.
Exactly, and it's interesting that you say that. I know that IFAC, the International Federation of Accountants, both IMA and our own institute here in Ireland are both members of IFAC. And I do recall that IFAC had put out a position paper exactly outlining that, Christian, the use of expert and expert witnesses, you know, to bring in and evaluate some of those risks which are outside of our comfort zone. And they certainly call that out as a prerequisite. Oh gosh, I think it was last October, November or something. But you know, you've obviously put it to good use there and very much on top of it. Joelle, coming back to you, maybe I know you're on a very ambitious change management journey. If I could come back maybe and maybe just explore, you know, what are the critical success factors that need to be in place within corporate reporting teams to adopt new technologies? What are the kind of the must-haves that need to exist in the corporate reporting teams for these adoptions to work?
Well, I'm not in the corporate reporting team, but when we are bringing a new system, a new tool to anybody of our organization, what we make sure is that first it is well explained and that training is provided, and also that when people have a question, that they know whom to contact, to connect. So I think this is important. You need to create a comfort environment that people feel comfortable to adopt the change, and to that they have maybe there is enough time for them to get acquainted with a new technology or the new way of working. These are, I think, in any change management program. These elements are critical for success, and also you need to listen to what to some of the feedback and the person are providing to you, and do also something from this feedback that because sometimes it can be relevant also. So, but I just want to add something there, because now, so in our organization, in the Global Business Service organization, we are very much advanced with the use of tool and working agile and working with visualization system, working with workflow. But when I look at our corporate reporting team, they are still using a quite old-fashioned way of reporting, because this is getting the number and maybe do some check using Excel, and so you do first a review locally, and after on the country, on the region, a lot of reviews, and so this is still taking place in our organization, but we are now engaged in a program also at this level of corporate reporting, where we are implementing a tool to work in the cloud at the end of the year. So to really, you know, have one place where everything comes together, because each time when you have at several levels you can report, you have this out of system adjustment, and after when you want to understand what has happened, it's always very difficult to reconnect the dots. But I think, to come back to your question, Connor, I think to provide a quite safe environment to manage the change is the key success factor for this type of program.
Yeah, I do agree, Joelle. We've had a lot of questions around, you know, how to, or kind of the challenges, I guess, of managing and supporting remote teams in large numbers, and how collaborative type of technologies have been used to reduce that risk. I think you both come from very large global multinationals. Maybe share your experiences on bullet point 2 there, you know, supporting large remote digital workplaces. Can you share any insider tips or best practices as to how you've supported large numbers of staff working remotely? Maybe Christian, if I put that to you first.
Yeah, sure. You know, listen, I'll say it actually starts with the bullet point number 1 here around having standardized and centralized processes. I mean, there's nothing harder for a team to manage globally when everybody's unsure of the handoff and the handoff times and the timelines and deadlines. When you're very, very clear in your process and your calendar, both your planning and reporting calendar, when something's due, whose responsibility it is to get it in, then I find that working across time zones and globally is less of an issue. What does help from a technology standpoint are a lot of the new tools around workflow. So whether that's a balance sheet workflow, a tool, a journal entry workflow tool. So as we've moved into these environments where we've gone to service delivery models, where we've broken up some of the traditional jobs to get done in finance, like journal entry and balance sheet recs. Now those are sitting with different organizations spread out around the globe. You need tools to help you manage the approval workflows on those, because somebody will still be the preparer, but somebody still needs to be the approver. And in many ways, the preparer probably sits in a different time zone than the actual approver. So having access, and everyone having been trained in having access to those tools and understanding the due dates are critically important.
Great.
Yeah, and for me, maybe from my experience, because I'm managing a remote team, so it's to have connection, regular connection with them. And I think the best things is, even if it's remote, is to have the chance to meet the people physically on a regular moment. I mean.
Great, no, super. And I guess the conversation, or one of the conversation points, again, that surfaced, at least on this side of the Atlantic, and I do appreciate that maybe neither of you sit on audit committees, but I think it's a general risk question, is, you know, how do audit committees assess, reassess and understand some of the risk from the new processes, you know, the new process flows, new fulfillment models, new supply chain, and what governance models are needed to ensure effective oversight. So, and again, that was kind of framed around audit committees, but maybe we kind of broaden it out to just general kind of business risk and risk management. How do we evaluate these new, you know, process flows and controls and risks between, you know, broad, large organizations, or between kind of parent and subsidiary? How do we understand, I guess, at a local level where the risk is, and how do we control and kind of evaluate that risk over the last 6 months?
I don't know if you'd like me to go first, or Joelle.
Yeah, maybe if you take
Christian.
Okay. Yeah, listen, I think so in a changing environment that we have right now, I think the assessment of risk always starts with a conversation with the business. I mean, listen, the business is, meaning, you know, those folks that we support and those that are leading the business, it always starts with a really intelligent conversation about what's changed, right? We're always starting from a point of looking at the business as it sits today, and hopefully our controls, whether those are SOX 404 controls or whether it's more substantive controls, that those are operating effectively, and we have testing around that, and that we prove that out. But then all of a sudden, something changes in the environment, right? Like what you say, like the world sort of changes. And I think you get that first assessment by talking with your business partners of how they see the view and where they see the risks, right? And then I think on that, it becomes a build of looking at how do you assess, how do you measure the risk, how big of a risk is it? And then how do you go about mitigating that risk, right? Looking at ways that you can build in assurances and an understanding, whether you're, let's say building that as a part of your strategic planning process, whether that you have to build out capabilities and invest in areas to help you manage that. I think that's for me always the starting point, is going more broad and bringing in the business partner as part of that conversation. Finance on its own can never just solve these things by themselves. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah, your perspective, Joelle?
Yeah, for us in my company, what I know what has happened in the last 2 years is, as we were engaging in this huge transformation program, that the audit committee, they got specific training to have them understand what are the changes on the market and what do they need to be aware of. And also in our company, we are implementing as much as possible automated control anytime this is feasible in our system. And explain also, provide good explanation on how all these automated control are implemented and are secured. This gives also a certain sense of control to our audit committee as well.
Great. There's one question that's come in here. I hope the answer is self-evident, but it came back from one of our previous conversations, and that is, governance is now more digital. So who controls it? Who owns it? And I guess it comes back to, bullet point 3 there, is that rapid shift of governance. But the question is, governance is now more digital. So who owns the governance? Maybe a question, if I can put that to you first.
Yeah, and I'll just kind of start where I led off with the master data as being a perfect example of that. You do have to have governance over your data, and I think it starts with ensuring that you've got the right transparency as to who owns that. And for us, it tends to be a central group. We tend to look to try and lock it down with sets that are guided through technology, and then but that doesn't always eliminate mistakes. I mean, obviously mistakes happen, and you got to go through, and you need a good reporting process to be able to kind of understand how you can catch those mistakes. And so I think that's one element. The other element that we probably didn't touch on as much is around, as well, using great software solutions around like R, Python, to be able to kind of use statistical analysis to be able to ferret out some of those outliers in your data that would help you explain and understand where you may have data issues. And I think that's another element of where software has gotten smarter about this, and because we're working with such large sets of data now, right? I mean, they're massive, the amount of records we have, and so it's impossible for you to try and think that you can go through line by line and do that. You need much more efficient ways of sifting through that.
Exactly.
Yeah, So for us, how do we control that on the governance? We are making use of self-assessment process, which is controlled under the Internal Control and Risk Management Office. So this is how we make sure that the governance, what has been structured global on the company level is followed and well under control.
Excellent.
Yeah, and discover also the master data part was Christian was mentioning.
Yeah. What role, I guess, and let me put it a different way. I guess how can we as an association at the IMA support members better, you know, to help them through this kind of accelerated period. You know, we talked a lot about kind of master data and master data management and understanding the quality and the control and the governance around that. I somehow think that that's not still, you know, in our primary wheelhouse, and that, you know, I think we maybe look at it kind of a little bit kind of on the periphery. I guess what are the practical steps that we can take as an IMA member body to support the members as we go through this? And Christian, maybe just given your background and your status, maybe I'll direct that one to you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Listen, I think we've started already through the IMA's Competency Framework, which if you haven't had an opportunity to take a look at, it's a great document, and it outlines the areas that we believe are critical for every management accountant and finance professional to know and understand. And it includes in this framework an area around technology and data. And what I will say is that, you know, listen, there's never been a more exciting time to be in our profession. We are going through it. We talked about the transformational changes going on within businesses and how our finance areas are adopting software. Our profession is going through transformational change where we are moving, we're being asked to and demanded of to know more and more about technology, know more and more about data. And I think the role of data and the quality of data, what is representative of a quality data set versus a non-quality data set, it's very critical in our roles to know that and understand that. And then how do we work with partners in the business, as I stated before, pulling in people from other departments who maybe are data scientists. That doesn't mean that we need to have degrees in technology. I'm not saying that, but we need to know enough to be able to talk their language and to be able to collaborate with them in a way to utilize the expertise that they bring and to pull that into finance. So I think, are we serving the IMA members today? I think we're providing the framework for it. I hope we continue to invest further in this area because I think it's one that's going to continue to be of the utmost importance for us as a profession.
Great. Thanks, Christian. Just mindful of the time here, we're about 5 minutes out, and I do want to make sure that we capture some of the audience questions. And I want to hear, maybe Joelle, maybe just given your background in change management and performance, maybe I might direct this one to you. And I think it comes from my perception, at least, is that a lot of the big ERP transformations, if we look back over the last 12 months, the ERP transformations either, you know, stopped or stalled or were rethought, or that, you know, finance teams that were working on transformation suddenly shifted focus to the order to cash cycle and cash immediacy and cash flow. So the question that came in from our participant here is, you know, what are the main technology initiatives taken on the order to cash cycle? So maybe share your perspective on where we are in kind of OTC type of transformations and prioritization.
So on the order to cash cycle, so as I explained during when I talked a few minutes ago, is that the fact that we had data available and that we could show finance and the sales and the business about, you know, that we could show them, okay, which customer were paying late, and about also the overdue aging bucket, that we could control the information we had in this reporting, and also using data mining tool that we could understand why certain customers didn't pay on time, and we could take action. So clearly we have used the technology, well, the data technology we had in place, but after what has really make the value out of it was that based on the data, that we could take action. I mean, our order to cash team or the guys, you know, working to call the customer, to be able to call the customer before the invoice was due, to be proactive, has really helped us to go through this period of COVID. And we were able to do that because we had the data available, we understood the data, and based on this data, we could look into a pattern. So it is the data we got from our ERP system, but also tools we are using to do data mining and to really go, we have a perfect flow, and then with this tool you can see, okay, what are the sales or what are the invoice who didn't follow the perfect flow, and then you can take action also within your organization to have this flow corrected when you see that there are some problems, or when you see that people don't follow the governance you have asked them to follow. So it's to take corrective action as well.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Joelle. And I know we could talk about this all afternoon or all evening. I think we're approaching the top of the hour here, so I'm going to thank you very, very much indeed for your insight. I'm going to hand it back to Alain for his roundup and to sign us out. Back to you, Alain.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much. And just like you said, it was very interesting to listen to. So I think we can continue for an hour if we want. But let's do it next time. But with this impressive panel, we have come to an end of this webinar, like Connor said. So let me thank you, Christian, for your very interesting insights, and also thank you to Joelle Career for joining our panel and share your very insightful knowledge. And of course, a special thanks to Connor for chairing the panel. You really covered the essence, I believe. And finally, I would like to thank Workiva for partnering with us on this webinar. And of course, thank you to all the participants who joined us from all over Europe. Let me know to IMA members that your CPE will be added in just a few weeks. So I hope to see you once again very soon on one of our future webinars, and maybe also on some real in-person events somewhere in the future again. Once again, thank you so much for your participation. And remember, finance drives decision-making more than ever before. Good luck, stay safe, and have a nice day. Bye.